Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So welcome to my office. The wallpaper has been done. The light in here is not great. Will that improve? Unclear. I know I have a bunch of stuff in my Tumblr inbox, so I don't know what's in it. We're gonna discover in real time together. Anyway, what can I tell you? Okay, so Twelfth Knight is in paperback. It now looks like this. It is still very much a young adult book that is it's a remix of Twelfth Knight. It's a grumpy sunshine romance, sort of antagonistic in that the two main characters don't get along at the beginning of the book, but they meet up in the MMORPG Twelfth Knight, which happens to be Viola Reyes's emotional support MMORPG. So yeah, that's Twelfth Knight. I believe also by the time I get around to editing this, you will have seen that Gifted and Talented will have a different cover for the paperback. It's very interesting to, from a publishing perspective, why some paperbacks change and some don't. It is really an indication of sales and whether the publisher feels that they have reached the correct audience. I don't know that there's too much super interesting to say about that, but you can interpret as you will from the previous cover to the current cover. This is a situation of me really liking both covers and seeing the merits to the changes. But I also was just I'm grateful to the illustrators who did my original covers, and hopefully you enjoy the paperbacks as well. Is there anything else I can tell you? In June, I'm going to Rio for the Bienal de Rio, which is really, really exciting. I've never been to Rio de Janeiro, and I'm very, very excited to go. It's going to be my first time in Brazil, and I am just very excited. I have a few things going on in the summer, but I don't have my summer hat on yet, so I have not sat down and looked at events. Some people have asked me if I'm going to be at Comic-Con, and I don't know the answer to that question. We'll find out. Let's get into my inbox. Oh God, 18. Okay, that's not great. That's not. Okay. Where can I read or buy Lovely Tangled Vices? Because I can't find it anywhere. Nowhere. You can't have it anymore. It's just one of those books that, like, Lovely Tangled Vices involved a witch sorority, and then my next book coming out is Girl Dinner, which is about a cannibal sorority. Basically, after I published Lovely Tangled Vices, I had the sense that there were elements in it. Initially, I thought about doing a prequel. So there were a lot of elements in Lovely Tangled Vices that I had the thought, I can do this better. And so everything that I took down, everything that was self-published that is no longer available is for a reason. It's because I did not feel it was up to par with what I was producing with Tor, or because it was something I thought I was going to use again in a different way. I have never felt that Lovely Tangled Vices was one of my stronger books. So you can't have it. Oh, here we go. No, this is a life update about, oh, this is a life update. Someone who had previously asked me about, who is struggling studying computer science has now transferred to English and economics, and they're doing much better. I certainly think that with things as they are, especially if you're a college student and say you're an American college student and you're taking on debt, you might as well study something that you care about and love and want to do the work for, because otherwise what are you even doing? It's very confusing to me. I don't know if you guys read the New York Magazine article about ChatGPT, but it was probably the most depressing thing I've ever read. There was a character. I mean, the character that bookends this article. Dear God, like, that is exactly the kind of person that I wrote Gifted and Talented about. It was like, here is why there's so much fraud in the tech industry, because they are literally just willing to throw money at things without any concept of ethics whatsoever. Like, that man needs to be stopped. I'm gonna keep calling them characters. Wendy said she loves to write, but she uses ChatGPT for all her essays. I was like, girl, what are you writing then? The thing that is so crazy to me is that, like, partying is down, sex is not being had. So it's not even that people are not doing their schoolwork in order to, like, have other vices. There are other vices, TikTok, and that's just so boring to me. Ew. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, very long story short. I can already feel the energy here. One of my best friends keeps getting back with her incredibly toxic girlfriend. They're both struggling with their mental health, and it makes sense why they feel like they only have each other. The problem is my friend always ends up a target when her girlfriend is struggling. The girlfriend will randomly break up with her over text or list everything she doesn't like about her. Not kidding. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Then blame it all on trauma and promise she's working on herself. The whole relationship is incredibly immature and honestly exhausting to keep up with. I actually just recently said to someone, like, it is no longer fun for me to ask about this situation. You know my feelings about it. My feelings are, this is not the healthiest thing I've ever seen anyone do. And we no longer need to have this conversation as long as you understand that's where I stand. This is not my advice. At this point in life, you know, I'm 36. So when my friends are having problems, it often has something to do with something more permanent, such as their marriage. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. But question mark. I usually stay out of my friends' relationships. Yes, yeah, good advice to yourself. Definitely stay out where you can. But I'm really struggling with this one. It's clearly draining her and making it harder for her to work on her mental health, but she just doesn't see it. How do I continue to love and support her when she is making decisions that are hurting her? I want to be someone she feels like she can lean on, but what's the point if I'm just watching this cycle over and over? Am I a bad friend if I don't say something, or am I getting involved where I shouldn't by pointing out what I'm seeing? I don't think there is really a good answer to this, because I mean, as I've just indicated to you, it's kind of something that you will deal with for the rest of time. I have mentioned in the past that I'm usually the breakup friend, that like when my friends decide that they're done with their relationship, they come to me. Like friends I have not heard from in years will suddenly be at my doorstep because they know that I'll help them transition out of the relationship without judgment, which I think is good. But it would be even better, right, if like we didn't drift apart because of that relationship. But there's nothing, like that's the part you can't control. And that's the part that's frustrating. I think especially maintaining female friendships specifically when there's... Sometimes when you're inside the situation, when you're inside the relationship, you have no context, you are not able to see things. I know that I get a lot of criticism for Alone with You in the Ether. A lot of people think that Alone with You in the Ether depicts a toxic relationship. And I'm not going to say that's not true, okay? But the point of Alone with You in the Ether is that it is the first year in a very tumultuous relationship. You're meant to leave the book with the feeling that these very unhealthy people who were not taking accountability for their emotions in any way are going to now. The point is not that the love is perfect, but that the love will make them better in the long term. And that like, just because they went through this difficult kind of codependent year doesn't mean that it will always be that way. Because the point of Alone with You in the Ether is, how do you love when you feel broken? So I'm just saying this as a means of establishing my like credibility. I'm not a mental health professional. I cannot give you like actual advice, okay? I'm not your therapist. But as a person who's potentially been alive longer than you and seen this happen a lot, I'm not sure what advice to give you. I think your instincts are right. You don't want to criticize your friend. The thing is, she will not leave this relationship based on anything but herself. Either her partner will eventually leave and not come back, and that will be the end, or she'll wake up one day and that will be the end. And who knows how many years from now that could be. It could be a really long time. And I think that sometimes I feel like we live in times where people use a lot of therapy speak in order to not take accountability. For example, your friend's girlfriend who is saying things like, it's trauma that's making me behave this way. You know, the point of therapy and the point of dealing with trauma is so that you can take accountability. It's so that you can identify what you're doing wrong and change your behavior. It is not that you use trauma as an excuse. Again, not a mental health professional, not involved in this relationship. But that's an example of how sometimes I feel there's a conflict between saying like, I want to have a boundary for my mental health. I want to establish like what is a safe space for me and I think that there are times when that is an important thing to have, but it also kind of blurs, because part of what being in this world and loving people and being loved by people is like kind of allowing people to be shitty, right? Like there is no black and white identification of what we owe to each other versus what we owe to ourselves. And there is always a little bit of weighing of like, I just want to be careful about how I talk about this, because I think sometimes people will give these sort of hard and flat, like, oh, your friend is like, she's ruining your headspace. She's making your life harder. And so you can, one option is to put up a stricter boundary, I guess, of like, I don't want to talk about your relationship. I don't want to engage with your relationship. It makes me feel really frustrated. There is also the version of you that is there for your friend, that understands that your friend is going through something and lets all of that sort of permeate your borders. And I think the real answer, or what I at least try to do in a way that is authentic to me, to the kind of friend that I want to be, it's kind of like, it's the little, I don't know, it's just a little more permeable than that, right? Like I mentioned that I have friends who are in relationships that I have always felt questionable about, that I've always felt were difficult situations. And, you know, they break up, they get back together, that kind of thing, or like they identify that I'm right about certain things or whatever, like whatever it is. At some point, I think you have the conversation that's like, you have to sense when is the right time to have this conversation, or what are the right words to say, that are just like, I just don't know if this person is good for you. I just don't know if this person really makes you happy. I don't know if this person, like, are they maybe taking more from you than they are giving? You know, these are the things that are hard to argue, because in every relationship, all the time, someone is giving more and someone is taking more, and usually in a good relationship you take turns. And so it's hard to judge someone else's relationship because you're not in it. I haven't said this in a while. My first therapist used to always say this. The only person who knows how the shoe fits is the person wearing it, okay? So you can't judge your friend for the choices they make, or the relation, you know, you cannot, you have your perspective on the relationship. You can share your perspective. But I think, like, beyond that, if this doesn't affect your friend, if nothing changes, then that's not on you. That's not on you to keep her accountable, you know? So I think it is fair to express how you feel about this relationship, why it's hard to watch, that you are a person who loves your friend and wants your friend to be loved in a way that you love her, you know, that you want. In an ideal world, everybody would realize that love is easy, actually. It's actually very easy to treat the people you love well if you just care about doing it. If you care about the people in your life, then it's not really that hard to love them. It's not that hard to take an interest in someone and to be careful with their heart. And I think, you know, especially in your 20s, I don't know if it's like a programming thing or just part of figuring out who we are. It's like we almost want to be punished a little bit. It's tormenting us, and that's romantic. I do think you grow out of it. I do think that, like, what you definitely want to do is that when your friend wakes up one day and doesn't want this anymore or doesn't need this anymore and they need a safe place to go, I think you want to be that safe place. So you want to conserve judgment to the extent that you can. You should be honest. I mean, what is friendship if you can't be honest with your friend? But I think as long as that honesty is not made in bad faith, you know, that's I am being, because I love you, because you're my friend, because my happiness is contingent on your happiness. This is the truth about how I feel, how I see it. And I think you just say that, and then she knows. And then how you move forward from there is kind of dependent on what your relationship is like. But I wish you luck with it, because it's not the only time this is going to happen to you. I love this too. Another question. How do I find love? I really struggle with the opportunity cost of dating, because every date I go on is less time for my students, my friends, my family, my research, etc. But I really do want a partner. Also, I live in Florida, so all the men on the dating apps are unvaccinated, and the people you meet at public events are either married or lost souls. Help, I need your wisdom. I mean, this is another thing that, like, I met my husband before dating apps were really a thing. Like, I had a friend who was using Match.com when it was still just a website, Match.com, and shortly after I met him, people began using Tinder. But it was not like, I am from the old style of dating where you would meet a stranger and they would say, "Can I have your number?" And you would say, "Sure," and they would text you or whatever, and you would go on a date. I loved dating. I enjoy dinner conversation more than anything in the world, actually. And also, one of the perks of being an artist, this is not relevant, one of the perks of being an artist is getting to be around other artists and the conversations you get to have with some of the coolest, smartest, most interesting people in the world. This is the kind of stuff they don't tell you when you want to major in the humanities, you know? But like, people who like to think are great to be around. Anyway, I mean, the only answer that I can really give you is not to like live. I think we live in a time where reality is very fluid. Like, half of our lives are lived online. A lot of our friends are online. We are having this experience in the virtual realm, right? And so I think I would not discount the connections, potential relationships, potential conversations that you have in the real world. All of this is real, right? This is real. But there is a difference between someone that you see in a physical space. I'm also, remember, I majored in urban planning, so I'm a big proponent of like physical space and neighborhoods and what that means. I think that, you know, the ideal world is living in a walkable neighborhood, is having a community that actually gathers at times. Like, these are the things that we have lost that make love, not just love, but all connection, harder to find in an authentic way. I think that is why dating feels so hopeless, because I think there is something to dating that has to do with occupying space. I think I'm working through this. I'm not sure I'm saying anything that's making sense, but the answer is I don't know, right? Like, I don't know how you find, I met my husband at the gym. I didn't even want to be there. But I do think that there are two pieces of advice I have. One is something that I've used for professional things a lot, but I think applies here too. I had someone, when I was a teenager, I had a hairstylist who told me that you should always talk about your interest to anyone, to everyone. If you talk about things that you care about, in terms of like finding jobs or a major or whatever, it's because if you talk about what you're interested in, someone else will be able to connect those dots for you. That has happened to me many times, that someone will be like, "Oh, I know someone who does this," or "I do this." A lot of times, actually, now at book events, if I talk about something that I'm interested in, at some point I was trying to talk to Black women who work in marine biology, and someone in line was like, "My wife or girlfriend does this," and you know, there's these. I think there is a very real power to making your interests, your passions, whatever, extremely upfront, because I think in our little cores, humans are social beings, and we light up when there is shared interest and shared passion. And so, number one, I think you should be really open about what you love. I think you should always be really open about what you love, because it will draw people who love those things too. And it will also, I think once people have a better understanding who you are, not only will they be more drawn to you if the shoe fits, but they may also know people who are like, "Oh, you should meet my friend who also does this or likes this," or "You remind me of this person." The other thing is that you need to actually, I think if you make the time to pursue those interests, passions that put you in public spaces that are not your house, that is another thing that could help. I mean, that could be anything. I really love the Renaissance Fair, you know? It seems like it would also be a very fun place to meet people if I were open to meeting people. Lots of people meet at my book events, which I think is very interesting. Actually, also, lots of people, I heard a story recently on a book tour that I thought was amazing, that a couple who had met, they went on one date, and then the boyfriend The boyfriend was traveling, and I believe for the date they went to the bookstore, and he said, what books would you pick for me to take on my trip? And one of the books that she picked for him was Alone with You in the Ether, and that book ended up meaning a lot to both of them, which I love. And I think it's amazing. It's amazing that she gave him that book, right? Because people who feel something about the book Alone with You in the Ether, it's pretty vulnerable. It's quite a vulnerable experience if that book speaks to you in a significant way. And so I think for her to share that with him was extremely brave. And I think that it actually is significant that he connected to it as well. I think all of this is a way of saying, I don't know how you find love. Love is mysterious. Everybody wants it. It's the kind of thing that we could theoretically spend our whole lives chasing. We could chase it forever. I don't think it's true that you never find it. I think love comes to you in many different forms, in many different ways. All I mean to say is, I think thinking about spaces you love, activities you love, art you love, really investing in those things, that is more likely, I think, to put you in a place where you find romantic love. And that doesn't rule out dating apps. I think that you maybe should be more, you just don't, I know that talking on dating apps can sometimes feel like a waste of time, but I think that it's worth it to be open about what you want out of a relationship. And because, yeah, I mean, I know it's cliched, but you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. I really think that's true. That when it's the right person, you won't mess it up. And if you mess it up, then it just was never going to happen, you know? So I don't know. I guess maybe alter your headspace on it. Yeah, I know dating takes time away, but don't think of dating as a step toward an ending. Think of the date as an exciting experience to share a new experience with a new person. That could be great just on its own, even if it goes nowhere from there. So I am an advocate for changing your headspace and not thinking of love and romantic love specifically as a race you need to run, and you're just trying to get to the finish line, because you never get to have that amazing first date or terrible first date again, you know? My first date that I had with my husband was incredible. It was we just wandered the city of Chicago for an entire night, essentially. And I'll never have that night again. And when I went on that date, I didn't know that was going to happen. And there's just this sense that life really takes you by surprise. And I think if you're open to that, these are the things you hear, right, from people who are already married. But I think it is such a wonderful feeling to find someone, even if it doesn't last forever, just to have a really good night with someone. I think make that your goal. Or a really good conversation. And I think that will often lead you somewhere good. Someone asked about, advice for an aspiring indie author who's self-publishing on a budget. I can't really afford an editor. So I've talked about self-publishing many times. What can I say about it? I do think that you need an editor. If you want to make money self-publishing, then you need to put money into it. There is the possibility that you have a career like mine, which was an accident, right? When I published the Atlas 6, I didn't pay an editor, but I did have friends whose editing skills I trusted because they were also writers, or had equivalent experience to mine, and I paid them back by doing editing work for them. You know, nothing happens for free, right? I don't think you want to edit yourself. I don't think you are an effective enough proofreader. I think that if you want people to value your work, you need to also value their work. So if you need to get a proofreader or an editor, you have to offer them the equivalent of what you think their time and talent is, right? And it must be worth something to you, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. If you cannot design a cover on your own or do interior design is actually, I would argue, more important than the cover design in terms of the reader experience. If you can't do that on your own, then you do have to hire someone to do it. You have to value art, you have to value people, you have to value work, right? So to some extent, you are investing upfront if you want to make money out of this. if you don't want to make money off of it, then I guess then I would reevaluate what your goals are. So for me, I self-published because I was trying to be traditionally published. I never wanted a self-publishing career. I didn't intend to make a living that way. It was just that I had the story. I wanted to, retain the copyright, but still share it with people. Because I felt the work was good. I felt the art was good and I wanted people to read it. But I was also not I was not marketing it to anyone. I was not trying to have any kind of reach. It was just I had been writing fan fiction, and then I would self-publish stories that weren't right for the traditional publishing market. And then, I made $1 off of each copy. That was how I priced things. And I did not do any real publicity or marketing or anything like that. That wasn't the point. But that's because my goal was always traditional publishing. So I guess I would have to ask you, if you don't have the resources to self-publish, then why are you self-publishing? I think it might be more worth your time to query the book and try to get an agent, because that will not cost you anything. You should not pay an editor. You don't need to pay anyone in order to reach an agent. If you feel the work is clean, if someone else has read it and they think it's clean, that is acceptable to send to the agent, because you will still edit with the agent, and then you will also still edit with the editor and the publisher, etc. I don't think that, especially now with what I think how robust the self-publishing market has gone, I don't think you want to treat it as if the resources you put into it are nothing. I think people do have expectations of quality. At the time that I was self-publishing, I really think the appetite was different. People were not as likely to read self-published authors or hybrid publishing. Now it's a lot more common. So I do think there is an expectation that there should be very little difference between a traditionally published work and a self-published work in terms of proofreading, and the kind how the formatting and stuff like that. I think you want to at least be confident that those things are correct. And one of the things I also did was I paid my illustrator. Lil Camaro was instrumental to the Atlas 6 and eventually going viral, which again was not the point. So with the Atlas 6, I had friends edit, again, friends that I repaid with my own editing work. That is viable. I was a graphic designer, so the design and stuff, the interior design, which I got wrong many times before I did the Atlas 6, and even the Atlas 6 I think had some interior problems. Those are things that I had skills to do. So if you can't, being self-published is running your own business. And with running your own business, if you don't know how to do something, then you need to hire someone to do it. And how you pay someone, if you can't pay them, what they're worth with money, then you need to pay them what they're worth with something else that they want. I don't know what that would be. It's not like bartering is out of the question. But I also think there are plenty of other self-published authors who did better at this than I did. Travis Baldree is a great example. There are plenty of hybrid authors who still do self-published things, like Katie Robert or Kennedy Ryan. Those are better resources. I guess I would just mainly ask you, why self-publish if you don't have the resources for self-publishing? Just something to think about. Okay, the last thing, and I'm only going to answer this because it's better to do it, whatever. This is about the Atlas series, so just fast forward to the end, or just leave, just go. So this says, I read some posts about how Nico only had one chance with Gideon, like he only met him in this universe, because of the quote, maybe it was just one sliver of an outcome because it had only required one chance to get it right. But in scenario 499, Tristan says that Gideon's presence as an archivist means Nico is a frequent visitor. So I guess there are other universes where they meet, aren't they? The thing with the Atlas series is there is no such thing as an objective, omniscient narrator, okay? Every narrator that talks is saying their opinion. So what Nico is trying to say when he says, so maybe there was only one chance with Gideon, is more a reflection on the randomness of life and existence. Like the Atlas series is a very existential series. It is about what does it mean to live a good life? What does power actually mean? When is power not exploitation? Is it ever not exploitation? In this moment, in Nico's perspective, these are Nico's dying thoughts. And in his last moments, he thinks, you know, so we don't get forever. So we only get this one try. Does that make it worth less? And the answer is no. And that was, I think, me trying to, I know people love the soulmate, like, you know, we'll meet in every lifetime kind of romantic vibe. But the thing that I had always been doing with the Atlas series is that I felt that Libby and Nico had that kind of platonic soulmate relationship that's like, oh, theoretically, in every universe we meet and we are two halves of this like incredibly strange whole that we don't always get the opportunity to understand, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't, and that's just like the randomness of life is what is so beautiful about life, that it didn't have to be this way, that it could have been something else. It's also the tragedy of the series. It didn't have to be this way. It could have been something else. But that doesn't mean that they literally only meet in one universe. I mean, the only truly omniscient thing that happens is, as you mentioned, the scenarios in which we like zoom out, because there is actually only one character who can access the multiverse. So it's not so much that like you're not necessarily supposed to take everything every character says at face value. It's more of a reflection on what are they going through in that moment. The other thing with the multiverse is also that's my gift to the fanfic writers, right? That's my gift of every universe is valid. Every ship is valid. Any way you want to write this, reimagine it, whatever you want to interpret the story as being is valid, because any of these things could have happened. And that is what is so extraordinary and humbling about being alive, is that there was no special significance to any character being any specific way. There is no blueprint to who they're meant to be. Power is not this, you know, it's similar to my other books in that it's not that you're always fighting between this gap of who you are and who you could be. There's meant to be something beautiful about just making the next right choice and recognizing that you're just a small piece of the universe and you can't actually understand your place in it, and you don't have to. You don't have to. And isn't that kind of amazing to have these wonderful things happen to you that are so statistically implausible? The idea that you could have a real, deep, meaningful connection with someone, it doesn't have to last forever for it to mean everything, you know? That's the whole thing with the Atlas series too, is that like I wanted to write a story where these people are not best friends. They're not really, I mean, they're found family in that they accept each other as they are. Not that they love each other, but these people who you don't necessarily love, that you kind of honestly hate, they still change you because you don't exist on your own, and your life will always touch the lives of others, and the misfortunes of others will always touch you in some way, and it should, because that's what being human is. And yeah, I mean, it is a much longer philosophical, a larger existential pondering. What does it mean to live well? That these books are about. And so in that moment, it's sort of Nico having a quiet moment of thinking, you know, I know it's horrifying and so sad, but it's catharsis too, you know, because in those moments he thinks, God, it was great, wasn't it? Wasn't that so much fun? Wasn't it amazing to have felt this way? How rare is it to feel this way, to have been this connected to another human being? How lucky am I? And that, I think, is what's meant to be imparted. But of course, you're supposed to imagine that they're happy together in some other universe. Of course, I would be mad if you didn't imagine that. Okay, anyway, I think that's all. I don't know. But this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing. I know where my dagger is, but I don't keep it out because my son might stab something with it. This has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing. And I'll see you next time.